welcome to what has been our first whiskey episode in a while.
Yeah.
We've not done one in a bit. I'm your host, John Foley. With me, Courtney Booms.
Hello.
And Marc Miller.
Hello.
And we're back on our whiskey series, back revisiting Scotch as a we're kind of completing a part 2 to an Isla episode that we did a couple months ago. So we focused on I think they were actually called Smoke Boys or
Smoky Babies
and Peaty Boys or something like
that.
Yeah. It was our Isla and peated Scotch episode. But we're going to focus now on the Highlands and kind of zero in on Speyside, some great distilleries, a little bit of history. And I want to use this as an excuse to talk about kind of Scotch in general and the approachability of certain Scotches and just the way that whiskey's talked about.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have one book that I just want to show people at the end. I don't know if you have any research materials or anything that you want to share at the end, Courtney, but Courtney has compiled, once again, a wonderful deep dive into the subject matter.
I just love writing down notes.
I do. I love reading the notes that you've written down.
Thank you.
And you're going to give us what's the plug, Marc? We'll talk about iLogic Media.
Oh, yes. Yeah. iLogic Media.
Yeah.
Our fantastic production company. They have a variety of different podcasts, lots of sports, pop culture, all that fun stuff.
They do video game stuff too, right?
Well, I think that's an untapped market that
I think you're the one to tap it.
You're gonna
that's sitting there waiting to be tapped by you.
Know, yes, and I will indeed tap it.
Good.
But yeah, iLogic Media, fantastic podcast production company.
Awesome.
Check them out.
So
the Highlands.
Well, Speyside
specifically.
Because we did cover the Highlands in episode 8.
It's true.
And 16 or something like that?
19. is Isla.
That's why Booms is great because she goes back and she finds all of the things we can't remember.
Well, that's kind of how this is whiskey is an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
And especially with what we do in the spirits world, whiskey it ends up being the primary subject matter spirits wise that you end up talking about. So you have to revisit the conversation often, whether or not it's revisiting things that you're just now tasting or something that you've kind of reconsidered or changed your mind on, or like the conversation is constant.
I think if I was to put it in one statement, I'd say that whiskey holds a lot of gravitas that other spirits can also have, but it seems to be a little bit more serious in some cases than whimsical in other cases.
Sure.
That's fair.
Well, and gravitas and seriousness is granted by the collective as a whole and how much they pay attention to it. And at that point, whiskey is very regarded.
Yeah,
indeed.
By everybody.
So if I was to jump in and start with the history of Scotch,
I think you are going to do that.
Wow.
Feet first.
Yeah, it's me. I'm going to go really as quickly as I can because we did cover it in episodes 8 and 19. So it's just nice to have a recap, if you will. So Scotch originates with the development of an early grain spirit called aquavitae. This was made by monks using distillation techniques from that would have been pulled from the Middle East, the Alembic still around 600 AD, forming its way into a more distinct barley-based specific spirit called uscaba or uscabetha. Around 1400 and 1494, it would be the first recorded year of whiskey distilling in Scotland. Specifically, it begins with references of beer or wort made from barley being distilled from those alembic stills using a heat and condensation method to make a higher gravity product from the first fermentation. Over time, as whiskey became more refined, it also becomes part of a daily life for Scots and ingratiates itself into the culture's identity. Those original stills become pot stills, so from alembic to pot stills. And then we also begin to see the use of cask and barrel aging from things like sherry or port wine relatively quickly. The first notes are around the 16th century. In 1831, N.A.S. Coffey, an Irishman, developed a patent still which allows continuous distillation of whiskey. We call them column stills more often than not, which he had first offered to Irish distillers. They passed that up, but Scotch heads did pick up on it, and they were able to produce much quicker. It made a lighter, less intense whiskey, you might say, like a little bit less robust, which made it actually greater for the overall market to consume. And with that faster style, you get the expanding, like widely expanding distilleries like and companies like Dewar's, Johnnie Walker, and Chivas. That combined with the decline of brandy and wine in the 1880s because of Phylloxera mold made whiskey just kind of soar ahead in the spirits category overall. Yeah,
it cannot be you can't really under exaggerate how momentous of a decision the Scots and Irish respectively made on the coffee still.
That's true.
Because this is a turning point for everything. The Irish got offered it first. They said, "Nah, we're fine," and the Scots take it, and it ends up allows them to make more, better, quicker.
Harder,
Yeah,
faster,
well, I mean, and distribution.
Wah, wah.
So one goes
Yeah.
from, I think we mentioned this before on one of the other ones. Stop it. The idea of one becoming a regional
Sorry,
spirit
Mike.
and one becoming an international spirit.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that pot still whiskey isn't still amazing. It's in fact the
It is.
tradition and
Yeah, it's
that
great.
huge style that made certain other brands.
But this
still
allows
soar, but
Scotch to spread out and conquer
It becomes a world spirit.
world spirit.
That'd be
Yeah.
a fun little side segment for us to do, is like blind different pot stills versus different like column stills
Ooh, and
whiskeys, and see if we can
identify.
tell like the difference and identify correctly.
I think you're developing some future episodes.
That would be
on
fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun because it's one of those things you think to yourself, yeah, of course I can do that.
And then we get them all
I
wrong.
can get them all wrong.
Except Booms, who gets the majority right.
Oh,
Maybe.
We'll try it out. We'll see.
Do some palate push-ups in between now and then.
Beyond, beyond
Sit
recap
on the
of
floor with your tongue.
One's all you need.
I can't talk today, baby. I'm resting my tongue from the tongue
Oh
push-ups.
God, yeah.
Oh my god. Well, besides the production of Scotch and how it kind of became a world spirit, we also know that in about the 1920s, a lot of master blenders wanted to start specifying Scotch regions, so it wasn't all just Scotch. On the whole, it was Highland Scotch, Speyside Scotch, Islay Scotch, etc. So
And it comes down to branded money too.
definitely,
Like you
definitely,
want
it's a
to
sales
hype your
pitch.
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Tennessee's been doing the same thing forever. I mean, the one tiny bit of the process that differentiates its liquid from bourbon.
Yeah.
But even if they don't use that, they don't call their whiskey bourbon because Tennessee Sour Mash is a brand.
Yeah. And let's see if we can send John Cole a little map, it'll be
Yes.
here-ish probably, and or straight over the face right here. Who knows? But on that map, you're gonna see Scotland, which takes up about a third of the UK at the northernmost point of the UK. And let's see, so it's gonna be on your side. So opposite, you're gonna see the Highlands are all around the top. Speyside is a nice little triangular cutout from the top. Beneath the Highlands is, of course, the Lowlands. To the right of the Lowlands, you'll see a peninsula that's kind of singled out. That's Campbellton. And then you've got the islands, which usually start around that right edge and then curve all the way up into the north. And in that set of islands is Islay, the specific island that creates the most peated Scotch, you might
And
say.
for those who listen to us on radio, that's going to be a little bit difficult.
Oh, they can Google
But
it.
but I mean, by the time that you're listening to this easterly front right here is going to come on in, and it's going to bend low. This little stampede of a high weather system from the west is going to converge, but it's not going to hit until around Sunday. So those of you on Islay looking to shoot a quick 18, you're going to be just fine. Hit them straight, boys.
Do you think golfing on Islay is easy, or like
No, they get
surprisingly
super
difficult? Yeah.
fucking hard.
So no such thing as an easy 18.
I'm not really sure how much golf there is on Islay. There's like 3,000 people. There's golf all over Scotland. And it's windy as hell.
It just
Yeah.
makes me think of like,
Passionate.
say what you will about the quality of the show Family Guy, but anytime they do like a weather segment and they're like, how's the weather today? Ollie just goes, it's raining.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
You got a window? Open it.
So for what we're covering today, it can generally be said that Speyside scotches are frugal with peat or smokiness. It's very light, if at all, typically. And it's abundant with flavors of fruit and even a honeyed sweetness. Predominant fruits found in the flavors of Speyside scotch include mostly orchard fruit, so apples, pears, peaches, citrus, and apricots. Frequently, you can taste vanilla and baking spices. More often than not, those flavors are coming from the region's propensity for maturing their spirit in either ex-bourbon or even more so ex-sherry barrels. And much of this can remind you of the predominant flavors that are found in Irish whiskeys, difference being malted versus unmalted barley. And of course, bourbons, which is why Speyside is one of the easiest transition scotches, you might say, or for the novice Scotch drinker who still has already enjoyed Irish or bourbon.
Yes, read approachable.
Mm-hmm.
These whiskeys are approachable. They're very, very easy to like. And I hate this word, but most people would find them, quote, smooth, which to me is a total bullshit word that is very, very, very subjective. However, it also can speak towards a lack of edge or a lack of heat, and it can speak to integration in the whiskey. Highlands whiskeys are well integrated. They hold alcohol well. They're not extra smoky. The sweet ones aren't egregiously sweet and syrupy like some other styles of whiskey. And they're all about balance.
Yeah.
For me.
Well made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ease of drinkability, and they're a great after dinner meal or after dinner meal. Secondsies?
11.
Yes. It's a good after dinner beverage.
So one of the things that I wanted to cover before we dip into all of the different distilleries is like, why is Speyside Highlands, but Highlands not Speyside?
Excellent point.
Right. So one, it is a specific region. You do have to be in that triangular cutout of Speyside to be called Speyside, but it's a sub-region. So it's almost like, I think last time in the first episode, so it's been episode 9, I mentioned that Speyside is kind of like the Manhattan to the Highlands of New York.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm trying to say, the equivalent of, right? So it's like a sub-region within.
Or like Basque Country.
Or like
in
Basque
Spain.
Country. Yeah, exactly. So if
Gary in Indiana.
it's also a marketing thing. So if your distillery is in Speyside, but you'd like to call your Scotch Highland Scotch because you find that it's more marketable or more easily identifiable, then you can still call your Scotch Highland Scotch. But you can't do that on the reverse. If you're in the Highlands region but not within Speyside, it can't be called Speyside.
They're protective over that because Speyside is a major part of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to a level of quality as well as geography.
Yeah. At the same time, too, it's also the highest percentage of distilleries per land capita, if you will. So it has about half of Scotland's total distilleries is in Speyside. Are in Speyside, excuse me.
I'm going to correct what I just said. Sorry. It speaks to a level of perceived quality. Because just because you are Highlands and not Speyside does not mean you're of lower quality. There's a lot wrapped up in Speyside. It's an international perception of quality based on, I believe, a few of the distilleries that helped make the name.
Yeah.
It's also a stylistic assumption.
Yeah.
In that other Highlands can be a little bit more robust stylistically than some of the Speysides, or grainier. Or,
Yep, that's the one I always
like
see.
Clynelish,
A difference.
Oban. These are great examples of non Speyside Highlands that are bigger. They're just bigger.
They're
whiskeys.
outside of that exact flavor profile.
Yeah. So this is another one of those things that can be very confusing if you're not a Scotch drinker, or even if you are a novice Scotch drinker and you want to learn what you're talking about. It's perception of quality and style within this small region.
That too, and because it has the most distilleries per capita of anywhere else, you'll still have ones that are outside of that general profile. It's basically what you just said. So they're outside of that general profile of like super sweet or fruit or whatever it is. So that's where maybe marketing as a Highland Scotch is a little bit better for them. Anyway, did you want to start tasting some Scotch while we talk about it?
Let's drink some Scotch.
Do you think there's 1 and 2 distilleries in Speyside? Like totally the kids that the other Speyside kids make fun of. Like, cool. You're here, but like, you're not really.
You're not true.
You're not that awesome. There probably is.
So what are we starting with over there?
I love to go alphabetical because that's how my ordered brain works. So Aberlour is the one that I have set up for us first. So Aberlour.
So one thing I do have with me that I wanted to bring is Michael Jackson's complete guide to single malt Scotch. This is not that Michael Jackson. This is not Michael Jackson that you're thinking of. Yeah. Michael Jackson was a beverage writer in the UK. I first came across his work in researching beer because he was a beer writer. He was probably the first actual beer writer who went around and tasted different beers and ranked them and talked about them and gave to the print medium a guide to drinking beer regionally, both not in just the UK but all over. And he then turned his attention to whiskey, specifically single malt, specifically Scotch. He died a number of years ago, I believe in the early aughts, but I could be wrong. And he left behind a pretty substantial body of work in terms of visiting and tasting different malts from different distilleries. This book is still updated, so you can buy it, and it's a pretty handy guide to just navigating single malt Scotch in general.
Oh yeah,
beautiful. Did that say quinoa? Some type
there's
of
a
quinoa.
Yeah, there's some. So he didn't do a great job at first in his non-Scotch
whiskeys
in terms of what he focused on. And not that Corsair isn't a a lovely distillery, but
Yeah.
I don't know if their quinoa distilled whiskey deserves a page in this book.
They're one of
What's
those
the
distilleries
title
I
of the
feel
book?
like that
Just
just
whiskey
makes
or scotch?
really interesting things, like off the wall kind of stuff. You know?
They found their market, and the market is niche.
Yeah, like
Yes,
like the band who only makes the 9-minute art rock songs.
Yes.
What do you
yes.
think? Oh, it's good. You want to play it? No.
No.
For them.
All right, let's pour up this Aberlour.
So here's the bottle for anyone watching. You can see it. I almost flung it straight across the table. So let me just hand that over. There we go.
So this is the 16 year we have.
That is right.
Their
So
base is, I believe, a 12 year.
the first expression I see that they offer is 10, but 12 is
Okay.
the more commonly sold. Yes. So Aberlour is a single malt.
I'm sorry. This is one of the ones that when I first opened this place, I skipped the 12. I
Yeah.
had it, but I skipped it and went right to the 16, thinking I would always add the 12 later, and we've just never carried it.
The 16 is
We
just
I would
like
have to
a-
agree by your assessment of that.
Well, the 12 is awesome, but I love this drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Aberlour is a single malt Scotch distillery in the town of course, Aberlour, Strathspey, Scotland, at the confluence of the Lower Burn and the River Spey near Ben Rennes. It was founded in 1879 by James Fleming, the only son of a tenant farmer, and he started in the grain trade. He'd also, by the 1860s, acquired a lease of a nearby distillery, therefore involving himself in the spirits world ahead of time. And it just took him 5 years to establish and develop a branch agency for the North Bank of Scotland at that same time. Sounds like a car just hit our wall. I don't think that
We're under
attack. Oh man, maybe we are.
I am going to go see what that
He
is. I'll be right back.
had been a chairman of the school board,
Run
an
your
elder
protocols,
of the-
Mark.
an elder of the parish church, and a county councilor, as well as town provost. So it's safe to say that he was a respected and prominent figure in with his reputation within his community. And he was able to require a few, which for those who don't know, it is a land tenancy. It comes from a shortening of the term feudalism from the Earl of Fife, where Aberlour is today. He was a major aspect of the area, and before his death, he sold his distillery to his acting agent, so Robert Thorne and Sons Limited, in 1892. It changed hands a few more times before it was taken over in 1975 by Pernod Ricard. In 2001, it joined the Chivas brothers, which is under Pernod, adding to their 14 single malt distillery portfolio, where it has been to this day. They updated their visitor center shortly after it joined Chivas, modernizing it, and is still a high attraction in Speyside.
Lots of acquisitions coming between the early and mid 70s to the early 2000s.
Yes.
As distilleries faced an unprecedented 20, 25 years of very, very low sales and a shifting culture in terms of international whiskey drinking.
Exactly.
So you saw distilleries disappear forever. You saw some of them struggle a great deal and become acquired. And this is kind of what allows a lot of them to weather the storm and still be offered today, where there are other ones like Barora and Port Ellen that shuttered forever.
Yeah.
Now some of those are now finally being reopened, but there was a giant gap.
I imagine it romantically as like a Daddy Warbucks and Little Orphan Annie situation.
Well, and Chivas and Diageo and these guys, they get to pad their portfolio.
Yeah.
They get to have control over a great deal of labels that they get to offer, which is how we still get to drink them.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting because there's a lot of big money behind these labels, but that's how they're still alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Aberlour does have a variety of bottle agings. We talked about a little bit of them already. So you've got the 10-year, the 12-year, they have a 15, 16 is the youngest that we carry, I guess you'd say, and then an 18-year.
And then some NAS.
Yeah, they have a very rare 30-year-old 1970s vintage malt, and then they have their cask strength release, Abudna, and then the U.S. Limited release, Abudna Alba. So that comes from, Abudna in Scots Gaelic means the original, and it's a homage to their founder, James Fleming. So they used this old recipe, basically. It's to ensure a rich and complex flavor of moist raisin and homemade fruit cake. That comes from their website, of course, and is bottled at cask strength, resulting in a robust and deeply intense sherried whiskey.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, when I've tasted it before, I got praline, black cherry, ginger, and dark chocolate.
So I did a little bit of side research on the Abuna. Did you know it's Abunak?
Abunak.
That BH makes like a kind of sound. Abunach.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've been spelling it wrong the whole time. Whoops.
So, interestingly, at least from what I gathered, the Abunach Alba is all entirely white American oak, and there's no sherry barrel aging on it.
I see.
Yeah.
But Knock Alba means the original Scottish.
Yes.
So there's the American reason. Yeah. So the cast strength grain bill, in homage to Mr. Fleming, one release in heavy Oloroso sherry, but the other one in American oak.
Straight. Yep. Straight white American.
Which is why you see a great variance in color from one to the other.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The Alba is far, far, far lighter, like 3 or 4 shades lighter.
Yeah.
Than
And another
Alba.
fun fact I found out about Aberlour is they get the majority of their barrels from the distilleries that make Rabbit Hole, Jefferson's, and Smooth Ambler.
Interesting.
Yeah,
All 3 of them
yeah.
considered more like a little bit more niche and a little bit more
sure.
like kind of off center
Yeah.
bourbon
yeah,
producers.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool.
And all of them
Amazing,
good.
yeah.
I haven't tasted any of that Smooth Ambler stuff in a long time, but when I did back in the day, I liked it. I liked it because it was weird and
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
little like rough around its edges. But I think a
Yes.
lot of their former releases have been rebranded and they've kind of smoothed out what they.
No pun
What they
intended.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's West Virginia, right?
I think so.
That's
yeah.
Hill whiskey. Mm.
Very nice. So we've got our second, if we continue down the line, is the Balvenie. I'm a little bit thinking we are going to get attacked.
We're not.
No.
We're safe in here.
You know, I thought it was the Dungeon Troll, but
It's
I
not.
think something else is going on.
Maybe a Pegasus.
It's like in Pleasantville. Hey, thanks. It's okay. Thank God we're in a bowling alley. Pretty safe.
Anyway, so our second whiskey would be the Balvenie. The Balvenie is a distillery located in Dufftown, Scotland. It is currently owned by William Grant and Sons brand. It was founded by William Grant himself in 1892. Having learned from his position first as a bookkeeper at the Mortlock distillery, he knew what was going on. So the name comes from a nearby castle, Balvenie Castle. The distillery itself was made by converting an 18th century mansion, which took about 15 months to complete. David Stewart, MBE, or Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, is Balvenie's malt master. He's one of the industry's most experienced experts and began working with William Grant and Sons in 1962. He's most famous for being the first to create the process that would later be known as wood finishing, a process whereby whiskeys are matured in one type of cask, such as ex-bourbon barrels, then transferred to a second type of cask, for instance, sherry, port, or rum, resulting in greater depth of flavor and complexity. Previously to this, it was almost always one barrel finishing.
Which they do a lot of now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And he received his MBE from the Queen Elizabeth on the 5th of July, 2016, for his services to the Scotch whiskey industry. So, standard bottlings of Balvenie include the 12-year single barrel, 12-year double wood, which is what I think we have in front of us right now, 14-year Caribbean cask, the 17-year double wood, and they've made a great variety of other ones. So they've got like single barrel, sherry cask 15-year that we've stocked before, the 21-year portwood. They've had a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year. They use like sweet toast American oak, week of peat. A lot of people know week of peat. They're big Scotch.
Because it's
peatheads.
delicious.
It's
Yeah.
delicious.
Hard to get.
Edge of burn headwood, day of dark barley, and several batches of Balvenie ton, which is
A ton, 1509.
exquisite.
Yes. So I was a little bit behind because I was mentally preoccupied with
bangs.
sonic disturbance.
Yeah, let's just put it out there. If you do hear some bangs on the podcast,
Yeah.
we're gonna try to edit them out as best as we can. But there's some work going on in the
Yeah, spring cleaning time.
that I will break someone's knees for.
So the Aberlour is, having just sipped it, it's remarkably mellow on the palate.
yeah.
With loads
Yeah.
of like really cool kind of like old timey candy flavors.
Yes,
And-
apples.
Yeah, and a lot of fruit. The finish is extremely mellow and it's extremely well integrated. We're going to go right into tasting and talking about the Balvenie before we move on to talking about the Cragganmore. I think that is, it's just fortuitously alphabetic that we're doing this way.
Mhm.
Aberlour and Balvenie are both palate-wise very agreeable. It will be
Oh,
very
yeah,
agreeable to the same
yeah.
person.
I
If
would
you like
agree.
one, you will like the other because of that rich nuttiness that the sherry imparts on the finish.
Yeah.
Finish of the Balvenie. It's going to be a complementary flavor
I think so.
to Aberlour.
And I love it. I love
Yeah.
anything Balvenie makes, honestly.
I just love Scotch, boys.
Yeah. Balvenie was probably one of the first drams to really educate me on what sherry finishing did to whiskey. And that seems kind of crazy to think about now, all these years in, because I think when I think of barrel finishing, I think of sherry above all others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of it a flavor that, because I've been enjoying Scotch for so long, I don't know where I don't remember not knowing what it tasted like. It is so long ago that, but it was Balvenie that did it and kind of showed me.
Mhm.
And that's what eventually led me to actually seek out and drink actual sherry.
Oh yeah.
And do you know what you said after that?
What? I didn't sing that song. Yeah. I never did that.
All right, let's drink some
like a
Balvenie.
lot of
Let's do it.
trademark disclaimers in this particular podcast.
We don't own the rights.
We
We've
don't own the rights.
I do apologize too, because I put the bottles in reverse order on accident from Craigenmore and Craigellachie, because I forgot that Craig is spelled Craig.
Well,
Craigellachie. Oh, that's what I was doing. I was going to show the bottle, and I was like, wait, I don't have the cork.
I have a cork.
You have the cork.
Yeah.
He is the master of
So
the cork.
Balvenie 12-year doublewood, the most accessible dram probably for you to find out in the world, although the 14 seems to be pretty well easy to find as
Yeah.
well.
The Caribbean cask is a big one, yeah.
Some of the older age statements have been shuffling a little bit. I know that I believe the 17 is going in favor of concentration on the 21.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones are a little bit harder to track down. There's been a 15-year-old single barrel that's been added to the lineup that we've been able to reorder
Mhm.
and is wonderful. But Balvenie offers you, in my opinion, a pretty complete picture of what sherry finished Speyside whiskey tastes like.
Yes.
Yeah,
My most complete
and
picture.
especially agreeable.
Yeah.
And you
sherry
can just
finish
like,
Speyside as well.
it's right up front on the nose of it too,
Mhm.
of this one specifically. That sherry, that like nuttiness, the woodiness of it all too.
A big thing for me with Balvenie is their willingness to be a distillery that does experiment a little bit, that will put non-age statement stuff out there, that'll goof around with barrels a little bit, throw out some stuff that's a little bit stronger.
Mhm.
Like the ton is quite strong, as I remember.
Yeah, but
They've dipped over 100 proof quite a few times. So they expand the core of what they do in really, really interesting ways, but always stay very, very true to what I would call the Balvenie style.
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Also, Balvenie is about a third of the Monkey Shoulder blend,
Yes, it is.
which makes Monkey Shoulder
yes.
easily one of the most attractive.
I used to
blended
know the
scotches
Monkey
for that
Shoulder
price.
blend off the top of my head. I can't remember it now.
It's Monkey Shoulder, Glenfiddich, and the one we can't get here.
Kennedy.
Yes, thank you.
Canindi.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was hoping you had that. That's why I
I
started it out.
did.
Okay.
Well
we,
done.
we tasted it that one time.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately did not sell enough to try and convince a deal to give us a
No,
bottle, but that's
yeah.
all right. We have to memorize that blend though before we get that super special.
Yes, we
delivery.
do, which we will not talk about just yet.
No, it's a secret,
coming
but it's
soon.
a fun
Coming
secret.
soon,
Yeah.
super secret special things. to
Okay.
our knowledge.
Yeah.
All right.
Balvenie to me though always has this very distinct, like bold roundness, if that makes sense.
It like fills your mouth.
It's a little bit bigger than some other Speysides.
Having tasted it right after the Aberlour, the difference in weight is very evident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balvenie's a big fat whiskey,
Yes.
but not in any way that's cloying or in any way that tastes syrupy. It's
Mhm.
it's a very well balanced whiskey. Balance, elegance, alcohol integration, those are things I always come back to over and over and over
Yeah.
again to Balvenie. And that's talking about its construction, not the individual flavors.
Right.
Balvenie feels good while you're drinking it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does.
Feels better as you continue
the,
to drink it,
the
too.
general palate of it is extremely, extremely pleasing.
Yeah, it just kind of like coats everything in a really nice way. You
Yeah.
could say.
You could. Yeah.
All right, what do we got next, Ms. Booze?
We've
Got a
got.
lot of love for Balvenie. We gotta move
Well, I
on.
was gonna say we gotta scooch those around, but
Oh, do you want to
Craigellachie.
do a flip?
Craigellachie.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's your flip.
Excellent. So Craigellachie, besides being super fun to say, is a distillery located near our first mention. So it's actually in the town of Aberlour as well, but it's named after the village that it's buttressed right up against too. So Craigellachie village translates to meaning rocky hill and refers to a cliff that overlooks the River Spey across from a distillery that we'll be mentioning last. It was built in 1891 by a group of blenders and merchants led by Alexander Edward. By 1896, it was reconstructed and partnered with Glenlivet And then a few years after that, it was bought out by Peter Mackey of DCL, Distillers Company Limited, which a lot of people may have heard of because it becomes eventually Diageo. And by 1998, it was also acquired by John Dewar and Sons under that same portfolio. So during its history, it was only released only released a few named bottlings, and the distillery's product is mostly being used for Dewar's blended whiskeys. Something that I learned recently is that Dewar is also under the Bacardi brands.
So when we buy this,
Mhm.
we will have relationships with reps for a lot of the things that we purchase.
Yeah.
And so if I go out and I have a question or I want to get something for our Whiskey Fest, and I want to see if there's anything they want to feature, how we work with them.
Mhm.
If I'm looking after Kragenmoor or Kleinlich or Lagavulin or Oban, all of those I'm talking to our Diageo rep.
Right.
Yeah.
But with Kragalaki, it comes through Bacardi.
Got it.
So in the States, it is underneath the Bacardi umbrella.
Oh, I see. So if I was to look for Kragalaki in Scotland, it might be under Diageo's umbrella instead of Bacardi.
I have no idea how it's
still-
handled over there, but most
They're
likely,
related. They're like
yeah,
cousins or something.
Bacardi's a separate division
Okay.
and is its own portfolio
Neat.
underneath the greater Diageo umbrella, and it's handled by different reps, and we have a different conversation.
Mhm.
So I would imagine that I can't imagine that Bacardi would only do that on the American market. That's got to be an international control
Must
deal.
be, yeah.
So I think it falls underneath the Bacardi umbrella, which there's a lot of stuff that does a lot of interesting stuff that does. Some of our casual listeners will think, oh, it's owned by Bacardi. I don't want
Right.
that.
No, it's good.
Well, so is Angel's Envy.
Mhm.
Angel's Envy, and so is Cazadores, which is good tequila. And there's a lot of really interesting things underneath these bigger umbrellas. So it's kind of hard to keep straight, but some of this money ends up putting some pretty interesting scotch on back bars.
Yeah.
Certainly did ours because I was
I love
undertasted on
it.
Kragalaki. Plus, I was first a little kind of interested in their wonky age statements. 'Cause they have
Yeah.
a 13, a 17, and a 23.
Yeah.
And they go odd years, which
Is
is
what we
not
get.
like your choice is usually odd years or even years, but I see
Mhm.
more often than not even years. So the odd years are always something that really strikes my
Mm-hmm.
eye personally. Yeah, they-
Again, that's probably a good thing for like their marketing too, is
Yeah.
you see even numbers all the time. So you see an odd number scotch, it's like, oh, what's
this
that? Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kragalaki is considered to be a bit more robust, a bit beefier than your average Speyside. You still get sweet flavors, though. I specifically taste pineapple we have the 17 and the 23 year, if I'm not mistaken, and vanilla, and a slight wisp of smoke comes in there as well. We did talk about this in a previous podcast too. Is the whiskey wrap up when we did the UK, so Irish and Scotch together, because that's when we got this in. was
Oh,
near
because
the
we
end
were
of the
talking
year
about our
last year.
favorite ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Kragalaki was a fun acquisition in this past year, and I always kind of feel embarrassed when we get a whiskey this good and I haven't tasted it
Oh,
in a
prior
while. I
to-
was like, how
yeah,
did I not do this? Well, there's a lot of work to do, and you can't always taste everything
No, yeah.
every time.
Sometimes you just got to refresh your palate with what you already know too.
Mhm.
Guys, we found out what it was. There's a fine gentleman out back filling our CO2 tanks for us.
Oh,
Oh,
right, so we can have
wonderful.
draft beer
Yeah.
on Thursday when we
course.
open the patio.
Oh
Yay.
yes,
That's
Yay.
exactly what it is.
That's right.
Excellent.
Fingers crossed.
It
that
wasn't
rain-
the dungeon troll.
I've kept him very sedated.
With scotch.
The scotch.
I was just about to
So
ask.
we just poured some Kragalaki.
Excellent.
Yes, it took me a minute to try and find information about Kragalaki because their website is currently down,
Oh,
Interesting.
which
no.
is where I source most of my information first, and then I start to look at
Very
books
like.
and things too.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the fun part about doing this, because I haven't tasted those three next to each other,
Yeah.
like ever. Like
Yeah.
I've never had occasion to taste Aberlour,
Oh.
Balvenie, and Kragalaki.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me a week ago where Kragalaki stood within the three of them, I probably would have, based on memory alone, said the lightest one. And I
Yeah.
would have been absolutely wrong.
Yeah. No, this one has some cajones.
It's kind of like it's kind of almost inky and rich and like kind
Yeah.
of, and it's got a viscosity to it that's different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit dirtier, but in a real good way.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's 17.
Yes.
Yes, excellent.
On their website, they suggest having a cocktail, basically a whiskey old fashioned, using Kragalaki 13-year, some vanilla bitters, and pineapple syrup. Which I always
Pineapple syrup would be
Oh.
great.
taste those things in there.
Mm-hmm.
Delicious.
Very cool.
You
Are you
kind of
ready
did
for
a cool riff on that same idea with the Ceylon Clouds.
Except her drink has a lot of tea and botanical in it too.
Yeah, it's fucking
Yeah,
great.
it's really good. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for Crag and More?
I'm always ready for Crag and More. Crag and More is secretly one of my very favorite of the Diageo classic.
Are you saying you want some more? Crag and More?
It's
not that.
I get it because there's more in the.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
It's the level of my humor. Y'all get ready. Crag and More is a Scotch whiskey distillery situated in the village of Ballindolig.
To be fair,
in
you have to work all night, so you need to save your A
Scotland.
material
I
for
do,
your guests.
I
Yeah.
do.
She's just warming up.
Yeah.
We're in the green room.
Yeah.
Where are my Skittles? Only red ones. Crag and More was founded in 1869 by John Smith.
with his own shoe.
On land leased from Sir George Macpherson Grant. The site was chosen by Smith for both its proximity to the waters of the Crag and Burn, where it gets its name, and because it's close to the Strathspey Railway, so he was already ready to ship that out as soon as possible. Smith was an experienced distiller, having already been the manager of the Macallan, the Glenlivet, Glenfarclas, and Wishaw distilleries beforehand. One of the unique notes about Crag and More that the stills used in the second distillation, the spirits still have a flat top and are relatively short. And they say that the still shape has a definite effect on the taste and aroma of the whiskey, giving it a highly sweet complexity. Unfortunately, the distillery is currently closed with no timeline of opening as of today.
So wait,
Is
are
this
they using?
COVID closed? Because we buy Crag and More whiskey, so where's
So there's still stock of Crag and More currently, so it must have been
But they're not
COVID
making
closed, I assume,
anymore?
but you cannot go there,
interesting? I
and
wonder.
they are not. They are
A couple years down the road, we might
Perhaps,
see
yeah.
Maybe.
more.
I've not heard any conversation about whether or not we're going to be able to carry them going forward. So now that's on my to-do
Radar,
list right
yeah.
now.
So are they
It's like how you
using
like-
a pot still with a flat top, or what's? Do
So-
we know?
Yes, it's a pot style still, and so if the pot still was, for those who can see me on the camera, if a pot still is kind of shaped like an inverse funnel, instead of going super high up to get like really pineapple esters and stuff that like you can find in other whiskeys, for instance,
They keep it low.
they keep it real short and then they flatten it out so that the
Oh.
tube to cool it, and their condensing tube, I guess you call it, just kind of goes almost immediately to the right
Interesting.
or left or whichever direction it is, but not straight up. Yeah. Fun facts.
Well, let's taste it.
I kind of want to learn a little bit more of the physics and engineering behind specific pot stills. And I have a book that I think will really help me. It's called Smellosophy.
I know that book.
Yeah.
I haven't read that book.
I haven't
Welcome-
either yet. I own it, but I need to start reading it.
You could always go for your third degree in distillation engineering.
I
Oh, you
could
go to
actually
Michigan
start
State.
engineering.
They have a program in that. Yeah,
That's
right
the
down the
Craig and
street.
More right
Best
there. If
thing
you're
for,
watching the video version.
Michigan State is agriculture.
This is part of the agriculture program.
And maybe biology.
It's part of the agriculture program.
Ooh,
Okay.
That was a real good sounding cork pop.
That was a good cork pop. I heard it from over here. I don't have earphones in.
I do. Yeah, we'll work on that.
Crag and More 12, the only age statement that we can get currently, and we might not even be able to get this one for very long, which is too bad. This has always been my, so you like Highland Scotch? Have you ever heard of? And then I pull this and nobody ever has, and they're always really happy about it when I pour it for them.
Oh, yeah.
This one, I'm interested to taste again because I haven't tasted it in a while. And I feel like anytime I get someone like that who wants like Highlander Speyside, I'm like, so there's a bunch of these other ones, but then there's this one.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a little bit, at least I remember it being a little bit rowdier. than
Well, and it's
some
more
of the-
obscure for people too, which
Yeah.
makes it a fun conversation for us because we can talk about Glenlivet and Glenfiddich and Macallan all day.
Yeah.
But those are conversations that we've had a lot.
This one, to my nose, smells the most similar, at least to what we've tasted so far, the most similar to like an Irish whiskey.
Well,
sure.
no, you're
Appley
and pot,
pot distilled.
yeah.
Yeah.
there's an edge to it a little bit.
I remember, as I'm not drinking right now, I remember Crag and More having a pretty good concentration of cereal grain flavor, like
Yes, it
Honey
does.
Nut Cheerios specifically.
Yes. And so it's more subtle than I remember it being, actually. It's pretty like light
Yeah.
and
You would almost put this one at the beginning of the
Yes,
of
the
line.
tasting,
The
yeah.
nose is a little bit a little poppier than the actual flavor.
yeah.
So Crag and More is a reliable dram if you want something just easy to drink. And that again kind of speaks towards what people look for in the Highlands: is roundness, sweetness, drinkability.
and just all around deliciousness.
Mhm.
Not that you can't drink whiskey every single day of the year, but Speyside and and like
We all make choices.
and Japanese whiskey and Welsh whiskey, for instance, there's just some of the ones that I'm looking at from our back bar. They all lend themselves very well to spring or summer, in my opinion, because unlike some whiskeys that get super robust or even like syrupy or big bodied, those that can sit a little bit lighter, especially with fruit or floral notes, just it makes it a little less hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like if I was
yeah.
gonna drink like a 101 rye,
You
in the
can't
middle of
drink
summer,
Stag
I
Junior
might
all
sweat a
year.
No.
bit too much.
Yeah.
This is something I want to. I mean, we may be able to get to it at the end if we have enough time, but I want to mention it now in case we don't. The kind of place that Highland Scotch has in a world right now where extremes are what is valued.
Right, like everything needs to be cask finished.
Or even with more people coming to peated Scotch, because it is an extreme flavor, and when you get into something, you tend to go for extremes.
True.
And that's either in how it makes you feel, or this sort of badge of honor because you're like, oh, I'm into the really big stuff.
I survived it.
Yeah.
I only drink triple IPAs.
Yeah, so like that thing. Yeah, so it's cool because it lends a lot of attention to people who are doing interesting things, but it also creates a style. And it's like, okay, well, everybody has to make this one thing because that's what the market wants. And then there's a lot of uninteresting whiskey out there. Well, where does the traditional Speyside malt land in that? And I would love to entertain your answers, but right off the bat, what I thought was it lands in a spot where it kind of hangs out and waits for people to come back to normal.
Yes.
And drink stuff with regular ABVs with moderate and mellow, well integrated flavor.
It's like when you're done with that like super edgy, mentally unstable boyfriend, you want to go back to the
accountant
tried and
who
true
really
standard
loves
who
you.
will set you up for life later on.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the very stable professor.
Maybe, but like we saw it even in Michigan, like
What stability?
Old Nation makes M43, it goes berserk, and everybody has 4 hazy IPAs.
Right. Yeah.
And they're all out there.
Yeah.
And now,
I see what you're
5,
saying,
6 years later, there are less hazy IPAs, and some of them are good, and still there's a bunch of bad ones.
Yeah.
It happens.
But you get real into this one style. The market is dictated by people's interest in that style, and then it all kind of normalizes.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have discussed that before. Like after so many years of drinking, IPAs, double IPAs, imperial stouts. At the end of the day, now in like my point of life, I just want a really solid like 4 to 5% lager.
Yeah,
if I'm drinking beer,
right.
You know?
And I love
Love me a good
Scotch,
malt
and my
ale.
favorite type of Scotch is undoubtedly peated. At the same time, I don't need everything to be cask strength, and I don't need
Right.
everything to be massive. And by massive, I mean super old or super alcoholic. I love big, strong drams. Don't get me wrong, but I have grown into an appreciation of this style of whiskey.
It's almost like a chocolate cake every night for dessert is maybe not the way you want to go, but
No.
an occasional Reese's peanut butter cup would probably suit you better. But you still want the chocolate cake every once in a while because that's super fucking cool too.
Yeah.
Like you need those varieties. But
I agree.
these guys
It's
might
the
be a little bit
cosmic
easier for the
brownies
daily
for
drinker.
me.
The cosmic brownies.
Oh yeah, nostalgia.
Yes. We got to go.
gotta keep going.
you
There's a
gotta
lot of
fit the
whiskey
last
here.
3
So
in.
Chugging along.
Glenfiddich we actually covered in the Highlands, even though it is a Speyside Scotch by location. So I'll just kind of glance over quickly and say that
Big portfolio for Glenfiddich.
Yeah.
You think but you don't. They make a lot of whiskey.
They only have like 37 different levels.
Glenfiddich translates to Valley of the Deer in Scotch Gaelic. It's easily identifiable by that stag logo that we all know. And like Balvenie, it's owned by William Grant and Sons Company. It was likewise founded by William Grant a few years earlier in 1887. Their standard or core range includes the 12-year single malt, the 14-year bourbon cask finish, the 15-year Solera cask, which is what I pulled for
Wonderful.
you guys to try today if you wanted,
Try to
and
buy.
an 18-year small batch.
I think you did this just to be
Experimental.
nice to us because both Mark and I really like
Well,
this one.
also it's my favorite, so I
Yeah.
get to sniff.
She's living vicariously through us.
Experimental bottlings, you're right, include Project XX, where they use a multitude of master distillers to work on one
She had to break because I just gave her my drink. Like,
Beautiful.
to smell.
beautiful scotch. Thank you very
It's like
much.
Jimmy John's free smells.
XX refers to 20, so it's 20 master distillers that worked on that one whiskey.
That stuff was
at
cool.
the same time. That was really interesting. Winter Storm, Fire and Cane. We've talked about those before. Their special edition bottlings include Grand Cru, so where they age in champagne casks.
That stuff's great.
And for the 19-year, Age of Discovery, so you've got red wine cask finishing in that one, and then the 21-year-old Grand Reserva.
As I said,
Rum.
37 different expressions of
Yeah.
Glenfiddich you can
Yeah.
get.
That's just a few. It's a
But
good
the
one.
12-year expression is everywhere. And
It
for
is,
many
yeah.
people will be your introduction to single malt scotch.
You
will
Either that or
find-
Glenlivet.
That's the first scotch I've ever
Yeah.
had, and the first scotch that was ever bought for me for my back bar.
Yeah.
That guy.
Even at the diviest of dive bars, you will find a bottle of Glenfiddich or Glenlivet
Yep.
12-year
Possibly
as
both.
their scotch.
Yeah,
I feel like.
most bars will have those two and some Johnny Walker and Chivas.
A great transition into the next scotch, which is Glenlivet.
Mm-hmm.
More appropriately, the Glenlivet.
The Glenlivet, yes. Also, Balvenie is the Balvenie.
Oh my!
Because some of these
apologies.
distilleries do that.
in our because I just looked at our menu online when I
Yeah.
was going through, we have it listed as Balvenie.
I
instead of
know,
the
because otherwise they'd all
Balvenie.
be the Balvenie, the McKenna, all at the
yeah,
end
yeah,
of
yeah.
my
So-
the end of my list. And so I've run into this while categorizing my records and
Yeah.
putting them into the file, the librarian book file that I have on my phone, which is how I enter my records every time I buy them. So I
Cool.
can easily reference it when I go record shopping. And I have always done the primary word, then comma the at the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
Yes. So I know I'm not going to look in the T's for the Beatles.
Well, like if a guest was looking for Balvenie and then they just didn't see it in the
Yeah,
first
that's
few,
about
they'd
where
be
your
like,
eye
"Oh,
should
crap,
go."
You don't
Yeah.
have Balvenie.
Right.
We do. It's the Balvenie.
So no offense, Balvenie, Glenfiddich, etc., to the vast importance of your name.
Yeah.
From now on, when you come into this bar, if I'm bartending, you must call me the Mark.
The
Miller.
Mark Miller. Well, you see it in sports too. Like the guys, they always sound off their college before they.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, some guys don't mention their college. Like from Street of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
But all the OSU guys always say the Ohio State University. It's like okay,
Of course
I
they
get it.
do.
There can only be one.
yeah.
All right, so the Glenlivet was founded in 1824 by George and John Gordon Smith at the Glenlivet Distillery, and it was the first legally established distillery in the Speyside region, specifically in Ballindallack and Moray, Scotland. Post-U.S. Prohibition, Glenlivet became the first distillery to export single malt whiskey to America. And in 1953, the Glenlivet and Glen Grant distilleries, also Speyside, of course, merged to form the Glenlivet and Glen Grant Distillers Limited, changed their name in 1972 to Glenlivet Distillers Limited. Seagram's, a well-known Canadian drinks brand, bought them out in 1977, which was later then bought by Pernod Ricard, so another Pernod brand, if you will. And today, the Glenlivet is also the most dominant spirit used in some of Pernod's blended Scotch brands. The core includes Glenlivet's Founder's Reserve, 12-year double oak, which we have in front of us today, 14-year cognac cask selection, 15-year French oak reserve, and 18-year batch select. They have numerous other releases, including a 50-year-old bottling that they call their Winchester collection. Their illicit still original recipe style is a 12-year single malt, and they have numerous first fill sherry cask finishes. It's kind of their focus for a lot of their excess bottles, if you will. And like John said too, it's like one of the most well-known brands
Glenlivet.
alongside
gosh.
Glenfiddich because it's been here for so long.
Yeah.
These other distilleries may have been in and out occasionally, but like Glenlivet's been here.
There's a I think it's really interesting why things become popular to me. And I'm going to try to retaste this real quick so I can speak as intelligently as possible about it. But Glenlivet 12 was the first single malt that I ever drank. I drank it
Mine was
because
Glenfiddich, yeah.
I knew its name.
Mhm.
Probably because it was mentioned in a movie or something.
Yeah.
And having just sipped some things like Cragganmore or the Balvenie or that Glenfiddich Solera, which was positively like sticky. It was so rich.
It's delightful.
Glenlivet kind of does a good job of just being great Scotch.
Yes, it's like a blue collar Scotch, if that were ever to be
Almost.
a thing. You know.
Well, the price point makes it very approachable.
Yeah.
The drinkability is very high. The body and flavor are extremely balanced.
Yeah.
You can notice a wisp maybe
Yeah.
of peat, but in no way is it obtrusive whatsoever, nor does it become a primary flavor point.
Yeah.
And it's easy to pronounce.
And that's what I kind of mean by like a blue collar scotch is that like I feel like if you were to go to a Scotsman and be like, hey, what bottle do you like always have around your house or that you can just is your go-to? I feel like Glenlivet would be the answer for a lot of them.
Sure.
Could be regional, but yeah.
Yeah.
That could be regional.
Could be. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll give it to you though.
But I bet it's not over all of the UK. Or if you go over to France, which is per capita the biggest Scotch consuming country in the world.
Yeah.
I bet
I'd be
it's
interested.
I bet
I'd be
it's
interested to know.
I bet it's all over.
Yeah.
Because also because it's been there for so long, because it's easy to sell, because it's easy to pronounce. It's easy. It's just easy to order this and have it be great.
Yeah.
Hyper recognizable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until you just said it, maybe it's the power of suggestion, but there is that slight little bit of peat.
It's always why
just
I've
a
liked it.
hint, and it is very pleasant. I like it.
Yeah, it's funny because the Glenlivet to me is like it's a little bit like Abbey Road or Revolver.
Yeah.
Like it's not cool to say it's one of your favorite albums anymore, but then you listen to it or drink it and you're like, no, but this is really, really, really great. It's just because you've known it for so long,
Right.
and it's really famous.
Yes.
So you don't feel like as much of a you're just not cool if that's your favorite thing.
People like that are turds anyhow.
Well, I'm just saying, but the more you learn, you find out how much of what influenced you is foundational and sticks around, or how much of it was ephemeral and just was there to get you into the next thing.
Yeah.
Glenlivet's the former. It's still, to me, an excellent dram of whiskey.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I don't think it should ever be diminished though, that like if your original, like whatever you started out with, even if you've grown to experience something a little bit more robust, say for instance in the whiskey category, that if you still like your tried and true, you still fall back on whatever it is that you loved before, then I don't think anyone should judge you for that. Suck it.
Suck it.
I guess that's true.
Which can
If
lead
you're
us
happy
into,
where you are, what led you there? Is,
Yeah. Which can lead us into our last whiskey, which is actually the first Scotch I ever had.
And
You're a bougie boy,
and what most people would consider, if you ask anybody, if you canvassed like 200 people and said name a famous Scotch, the majority answer would probably be the Macallan.
The Macallan. Take it away,
The
boys.
Macallan.
It is huge in the realm of rare and fine whiskey collectors. The
God.
Macallan is expectedly then gained a reputation for smooth and pleasing qualities, much as you hate the term smooth. It was built on a 485-acre estate.
It's a necessary term.
North of the River Spey. So this is the distillery I mentioned earlier that Craigellachie faces. So they're on opposite sides of the river, looking at each other, probably comparing notes, something like that. And the distillery was founded by Alexander Reed. He was a barley farmer and school teacher. The original name of the area was Macallan, so with a GH, where the C is, and then an E. And it's taken from the Gaelic word mar, meaning fertile ground, and Ellen comes from monk Saint Felian, who held a close association with the church that stood on those grounds before the Macallan estate was built. It was around 1400. Macallan offers their 6 pillars of quality as a testament to making their Scotch. I will preface this by saying most people probably have these same pillars, but this is what I found through my research.
But they said they had them.
The first pillar is the estate. So the Easter Elkes House, which is what they call the estate now, was built for Captain John Grant in 1700 as a reminder to take natural beauty of the area while harmoniously farming their maltings there. At least earlier on, if you believe that they take maltings from Port Ellen now as well. Mm-hmm. The second pillar goes to their curiously small stills. So they've got copper pot stills. They have about 24 of them. Each can hold only about 3,900 liters, which is pretty small compared to most Scotch houses. Yeah. The third pillar goes to their high standard for cut faces. So they're super selective in order to work towards making a very rich whiskey. They will quote unquote throw away more whiskeys at the heads and the tails than often people will do. And their fourth pillar is given to their choices of exceptional oak casks, as casking can influence up to 80% of the overall flavor profile of a whiskey.
And they take wood very seriously.
Yes.
Yes. Some serious wood over there. Fifth, they give a pillar to the fact that their whiskey is only ever naturally colored, as Scottish whiskey law does allow a certain percentage of coloring to be added to those brands who choose to do so.
Small pause on that. I have formally judged whiskeys that I knew to color their whiskey, and I have stopped doing that because I have tasted some pretty phenomenal whiskey. It's very easy to judge that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's bad whiskey that does it. Sorry, Templeton. Still not good. Don't like you.
But there's
But there are
Shots
also
fired.
I don't like Templeton. It does nothing for me. But and I don't carry their brand, so I put my money where my mouth is. It's not like it's on the back bar and somebody can come here and be a jerk about it. Like I don't carry it because I don't like it. But there are plenty of whiskeys that are colored that are very, very, very good. So it's one of those things you just kind of got to get over.
Yeah.
It's really, they're just putting it in a real fine suit.
Yeah.
And, that body is still beautiful with or without the suit. Anyway, their sixth pillar, that final one, is that they are noted as a peerless spirit. So apparently no other spirit can really hold a candle to that.
Oh, there's the braggy pillar.
That is a personal
That's
choice.
the sixth braggy
adding
pillar.
That pillar. Yep.
Yes. And the seventh pillar is
You only need 4 pillars to hold up a roof.
seventh pillar is the strategy, and the seventh pillar is the materials gained from the innocents that are burned on a blood moon.
That sounds strikingly
Yeah.
similar to the fact
Evil,
that they
evil.
have these like super old bottlings. So they use like I think it's called Lilac crystal decanters. It's like the most expensive crystal decanters you can ever get out of France. They use those for some of their super.
Well,
old,
I mean, are we still saying
you know what I mean?
between them and the Dalmore, these are the two producers of the most expensive whiskeys in the world?
Yeah, because they have some of the oldest
Pound per
Scotch,
pound,
and
yeah.
because it's such like old rare whiskey, they always put it in super like fancy ass bottles. So the Reach is an 81-year-old Scotch, and it literally comes with its own like sculpted hand base.
Mhm.
So you've got like statues,
And it's something like
Oh,
what,
it's crazy.
$80,000 a bottle or something stupid, right?
Oh, I mean, it's all priced out in like euros and pounds, but
a lot.
It's close to the millions.
Because I remember, Dalmore released a 62-year-old that was astronomically expensive.
Yeah.
And I think I looked up the Macallan 50 one time, and this was when Skyfall came out, because there's a moment where it's like a William Tell moment,
Yeah.
where they put the glass of scotch on this poor Bond girl's head and shoot at it,
Oh,
and it works out terribly for her. Anyway, they mentioned that it's 50-year-old Macallan. Bond drinks a dram of it at one point in the movie too, and I looked it up, and I think at the time that was like a 50,000 pound bottle of.
So it would have been like
30,000 pound bottles. It's a
2,000
lot.
pound dram.
Yeah, I did price it out.
Yeah.
For drams, and I think it was something like that. Yeah, it's like we would have to sell it for $3,000.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yep.
So Macallan to me, the first time I bought, I think it was like a pint bottle. I found a little pint bottle of it, which I thought was very strange to find.
You can
Fancy
get
pints.
airplanes of Macallan 12.
Really?
Yep.
Well, there you go. So revisiting it, because the first time I had
Because
Macallan,
it's sold in first class.
no,
No, that's why. That's got to be why.
it's got to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it.
The first time I had it, my thought was, wow, I really don't like this. And now revisiting it, I think it is one of the most well-balanced, just like well-integrated, kind of a sexy whiskey, I think.
Yeah.
But-
We harp on it, but it's still like
As we harp
They are
on it because it's
producing.
famous and doesn't
Right.
need our help to sell.
Right.
true.
So it's like, yeah, okay. The Yankees are really
Exactly.
good. The Yankees have been good for 80s, 90, 100 years.
Yeah.
So it makes it very easy to hate the Yankees. Macallan is sort of like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's easy to just kind of hate it. Like, oh, you like the Beatles. Everybody likes the Beatles. Well, the
The
Beatles,
Beatles
made
were
good
a
music.
great fucking band.
I'm not saying that Macallan is the Beatles, but it becomes very, very easy to be dismissive about brands that are famous.
Right.
You can eat. Yeah.
That's
you can glance
why
over it
if you're a
easily.
serious person in this industry and you do allow yourself the opportunity to taste, going back and retasting some of these brands that you have assumptions about is very, very important.
Yeah.
I had a personal moment about a week ago where a rep offered to bring me in, our Bacardi rep offered to bring me in some age statement rums from Bacardi. And I was like, I don't know if I want Bacardi. I don't carry Bacardi. I mean, we have a relationship with them from some of the other things in their portfolio that we do carry.
Yeah.
But I said, yeah, I'll try, the 4, the 8, the 10, and then they have another one called Limitado, which is an NAS. And yeah, I bought all of them because they
They're
were
good.
really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Like all that flavored rum that people chug in dorm rooms, that pays for something else. These are
Right.
reputable distilleries that
Yeah.
do make great product. So if you're a professional person, like you just gotta try to remain objective as much as you can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was.
Just because
I was-
something sells a lot doesn't mean it's bad. It's not like U2. That's a bad band. They sell a lot of albums, but
I mean,
Macallan is not U2.
I personally, I was like staunchly against carrying Bacardi.
That's
Like,
why I
no,
did it
dude,
without you.
Just try them.
That's why I bought them before you could taste them. You would have said yes if you had bought them too.
If you tried them first.
Yeah, you tried them first.
Well, to round out Macallan, I'll just say their core line as I've done with the rest of the whiskey. So you've got a sherry oak, 12-year, 18-year, and 25-year. Their double cask is sherry and American oak, 12, 15, 18, and 30. And then their triple cask, sherry, American, and ex-bourbon is 12, 15, and 18. One thing I will give them as well is that they did something really interesting to me, which is that they have this Harmony collection, which focuses on sustainably sourced packaging, collaborating with a pair of brothers from Spain, the Rocas, made from cacao. And then they influenced a lot of cacao into that whiskey that they store within the Harmony bottle.
Nice.
I found it really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm very happy this is in the lineup, especially having tasted it against everything else. I'm not declaring it an out winner, but it stands up very well with everything. And it is a beautiful standard because it's light and lifting and very playful, yet nice and rich and extremely easy to drink on the end.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the point we were making before. It's like there probably is no like out and out like winner out of all these whiskeys. They all do different things very well and very distinctly. So it just depends on your palate and what you're feeling that day, you know.
Yeah.
Which leads me back to one thing that I wanted to say about Scotch before we wrapped up for sure. Remember, with bourbon, every single whiskey has been aged in a newly charred barrel. With Scotch, the process of aging is different per bottle. So each bottling will have the house style, but also be a different and unique expression. That's true for the bourbon too, but those baking flavors are going to be ubiquitous in bourbon. And there's going to be things that happen on the finish and with fruit and with wood influence in Scotch that's different from bottling to bottling.
It's more of a you do you situation.
And that's why I love it so much.
You do you, boo, boo.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
And there it is.
You don't say that to Cindy, do you?
Yeah.
Only if I've had a
I'll
couple
say it to
grams.
Cindy.
All right, that's Speyside Scotch, I think, guys.
It really
I think
is.
we did it.
Boom.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yes.
boys. Thank you very much.
Heart and
Thanks
soul of the podcast.
Thanks for
folks.
tasting on my behalf.
We got you.
This time.
We'll
Thanks.
lift,
Um,
lift you up where you belong.
With arms wide open.
Again, we don't own any of those songs.
All right, join us for our next episode where we pair peanut butter whiskey with Creed songs. You're gonna love it. Yeah.
Once again, shout out to iLogic Media, our production company, for putting this all together
Yes.
for us. Check us out on our social medias. We're the Relief and Resource Company on Facebook,
We are.
Relief and Resource on Instagram, Relief_Resource on Twitter.
Mhm.
Check out, by the time this comes out, we will have the Rum Alley open. on
Patio
Thursdays,
bar.
Fridays, and Saturdays. It's our
Yep.
patio bar to the side of the bar.
All
And
of
stay
my tiki
tuned
shirts will be
for an episode soon where we will announce something that's happening on July 1st at the bar for our local listeners. It has a tie to this episode, so if you're a Scotch-minded person, you're going to want to, if you're in town, you definitely want to be here on July 1st.
Yes, absolutely.
And what is
It's
our
going to
next
be
one? Do we have our next one picked?
I believe it's botanical gin.
Gin.
Oh, botanical gin part 2.
Yes, gin part 2.
Yeah,
From
so,
dry to
yeah.
botanical.
So it's almost Memorial Day weekend. It's sequel season, kids. So we did the
Hey.
sequel to the Scotch. Now we're gonna do a sequel to the gin episode.
These are our Terminator 2 Judgment Days.
yes, exactly. And our Hellboy 2 Golden Armies. Outstanding.
Oh my God.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you for listening and watching.
Thank you.
Huzzah.
Cheers, guys. Do you ever get too close to these mics and your beard gets caught?
I just did it. It happened.
Yeah.
It just happened right before this. It was a mustache here. It was horrible.
I gotta
And it
say,
got
I
caught in this little fucking crosshatch.
Yeah.
can't relate.
It's what Glenlivet is what Bunk Moreland drinks in The Wire. When he and Jimmy go out, he drinks Glenlivet and Jimmy drinks Jameson. Yep. Because that's what Bunk says one more time. He's like, one more time for old time's sake. Let's go out, hit a few places. Me on the Glenlivet, you on the Jamie.
Nice.
Because then they always end up wasted at the railroad tracks, just drinking out of like just drinking beers off the hood of their car and like throwing things onto the tracks.